10 practices in, you had a scrimmage. Anything pop in that thing for you guys?
Yeah, I would just say overall, I appreciate, the intensity that I think we've been able to consistently practice with so far. That's probably what I would say for this group up until this point. They've probably been the most consistent of that. I would hope that would be the case with as much veteranness as we have in our program and guys that have been through fall camp, understand the value of each day. But I just think it's been really back and forth. There's been a lot of really good intensity and physicality so far through fall camp. And, I guess the challenge will be, can that continue on? And that'll kind of probably be a great indicator of where this team is early in the football season.
I think you've reiterated a theme of, can we be tough enough to be good enough? Yeah. Where do you figure out at this point? And B, maybe more importantly, how you handle the uniqueness of week 0 tell the tale of that?
Yeah, I would say, the mentality so far is where you want it to be. And again, I would hope so. I still think it's easier to be tough right now. Everybody feels fresh. You're fairly healthy and you're in a spot where it's easy to be mentally tough. Everybody feels like they're still going to play, right? The roles haven't been clearly defined yet. So it's easy to be tough right now. And, there'll be a little bit more of that. I think week 0 and even early in the season, I think you're still not going to know where this team is till you get to the midpoint of the season, right? I think with all the uniqueness of the travel, it's probably not week 0 as I'm as concerned with. It's the weeks after and, into the early part of this football season that's going to probably showcase how can this group prepare mentally equally to physically. I think those are where all the great challenges are going to lie. And every day right now is a great opportunity to kind of hone in those habits and those skills that it takes to get up every day, not feeling great, repetitive practice, highly competitive, and show up. The great thing is right now, if you don't show up, you're going to get exposed. And, I don't know if we've always had enough talent at one time to be able to maybe execute that way, where sometimes you can maybe get away with it. Well, you can't hide on the videotape right now. You're going to get exposed, and really your side of the ball is going to get exposed if you're not ready to practice. So I think those things are positive for me at this moment.
What are some of the position battles where you've seen the most activity, especially at the top, and who are those guys?
Yeah, I just think there's so much of that still going on this team. I just across the board. I mean, when you look at this roster, you got as many of those linebackers coming back. I think those are going to be probably till the early part of the season, until some of those things get defined, because I just think there are good players and there is high-end competition. Obviously, at the tight end position, you've got good players, and a guy like Cooper Alexander, he's had an incredible camp, and so there's a guy that's healthy that nobody really knows about, but I think we internally felt like he was really good, and boy, he's had a great start to things, and so he's pushing for playing time at the receiver position. With what Chase has done, and then you talk about Dom, and I think he's had an incredible camp so far, and you talk about X, you talk about just this group in general right now at receiver. Brett Eskelson, again, who's playing when it matters the most, right? I think those things are going to be really unique to kind of continue to find out. No different at tailback. I think Carson set a really high standard, and I think Abu, has done a really great job. Dylan Lee has had an incredible camp so far, which I think is awesome to see, and then you got some really young, talented guys behind him, with Flora coming and what he's done. And then you flip over defensively. I probably as deep as we've been in nose. I think really talented there. Kamari Moore's had a really great camp to kind of push those guys at the top. I think that defensive end position is going to continue to, go. Tama's had a really great camp. It's exciting to have him. I think he gets better every day in terms of certainly where he's at and what that looks like. Pushing kind of the pile of guys there in terms of what that looks like. And, even the secondary, Kaijon Cummings-Coleman, I know I've continued to talk about him, but, the type of camp he's had has been remarkable so far. So, I just think across the board, there is a lot of depth in terms of that. And again, that you're going to have high-end competition with this group, I think, right now, because there's a lot of guys that want to play. And I think those battles are going to go way longer than, even just week 0 and week 1 of the season. I think until we kind of iron it out and see who's ready to step up in the big moments, I think those will be some telltale signs for us.
And then just a kind of a housekeeping question on injuries. How's that looking a few weeks in? And I don't know, maybe outside chance of any like position changes, or how's that looking?
Yeah, I think positionally, I don't see a whole lot going on right now. We'll kind of think probably by the end of this Friday's our next big scrimmage day, so we'll probably have a great chance to evaluate this team to see if there's any of that. I think the injury piece of it, Michael Parks is really the only long-term injury that still looks like we're not where we would want to be, but I think the rest of the group is, we've had guys dinged up, but nobody that's of any significance right now, which I think is a huge positive. And again, I give, Joe and Reed and our group a lot of credit, because I think we're in a lot different spot than we were a year ago at this point. And I think, what we did in the weight room, what we did with Joe Resendez in our athletic training room, I think those guys have done a remarkable job.
Matt, for a game like this, a week 0 game, when is the game plan complete for it? And when does fall camp transition to game prep?
Yeah, probably. And the nice thing is, it may be week 0 for everybody else. It is still week 1, in terms of for us. So, I don't think that has holistically shifted how we've gone through fall camp. We usually, this is still a huge week of Iowa State versus Iowa State. I think next week we use the early part of next week to clean up Iowa State versus Iowa State. Where are we internally? How are we going to start the season with some of it? I think there'll be still some really big, good on good practices. And then, I think as we get through the mid part of next week, now we start to, dabble into, our opponent and start to put some of the game plan. Nice thing is for us, we've been able to really put a lot of the game plan stuff from a coaching standpoint. For those first couple games, we were able to really work on that through the summer. And so we'll transition that as we get ourselves a little bit towards the midpoint of next week and kind of transition to game 1 and get ourselves ready for that. So that's the nice thing a little bit from our end of it, schedule-wise. It really doesn't change, other than we're just bumped up a week in terms of when we started.
Coach, throughout the offseason, you've spoken a lot about not necessarily being concerned about going to Ireland, but maybe the effects after Ireland. How important is it for right now players to learn the importance of one day at a time, one practice at a time, one rep at a time in the weight room, whatever it may be? Because obviously right now is a challenging point, and the season will be challenging early.
Yeah, I think you've been around me enough to know, that's kind of how we run things anyways. I mean, and to be honest with you, that started in January, knowing what was the challenge from day 1 we came back here, knowing, number 1, the intensity and the opponent we play week 1, to the reality of, the uniqueness of, our habits of how we hydrate, how we bank sleep right now, how we recover. All those things are going to be, are you tough enough to do those things? I mean, you're asking 18 to 22-year-olds to do that, right? And that's hard. I think we all felt invincible at that age, but the reality, we're asking them to live like a 26, 27-year-old vet, to be able to have those kind of championship habits. So I think they're great teaching opportunities right now. Again, when you have repetitively high-end, tough practices, you better go home, you better get a great night's sleep, you better hydrate. The heat we had early last week was awesome for this team. I think we'll get it back a little bit this week, it sounds like, which is great. I think the more uncomfortable we can make it and challenging we can make it, those are great learning opportunities for everybody to say, man, what's it take for me to be my best in those moments? So, we're certainly using those as great learning opportunities for sure.
And then on Friday, I believe your new contract was finalized and announced. How excited are you to get your name on that dotted line as you enter what is your 10th season here in Ames?
Yeah, it's great to have clarity and great to kind of be able to put ourselves in a position holistically to continue to build a program that we want to build, and a program that it's going to take everybody, and it always has, and the ability to make sure we have enough flexibility to take care of our players, our staff, and everybody involved. I think that's the biggest thing for me, and hopefully as we continue to grow as a program, we can continue to prove why this place is different, why this place has a chance to compete year in and year out at a really high level, and that part I'm certainly really proud of.
I would imagine by the time players get to this level, most of them hold toughness is probably a core trait. How have you seen them respond to you, kind of wondering aloud what that toughness level is for this group?
Yeah, and I would hope the curiosity of those guys would be where, and I think that's what I really appreciate. Physical toughness is, to me, that's easy. You're right. It's hard to get to this level if you don't have some of those foundational traits. But can you can you repeat that physical toughness day in and day out? Can you physically show up and be your best? Because we've talked about the great players in our program, and the great players, man, if you watch Noel and Higgins and you watch, like I said, about Burkle, and you can go through every great player, they physically came to practice every day on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I always say that in here, like, man, if you guys could be out there and watch them practice, they're making the same plays Tuesday and Wednesday in practice as they are in Saturday. What that is that gives you elite confidence. It gives you the ability to go into those tough moments. Man, it's 4th and 3 or it's 4th and 4. You're down by 7 and you got to go make the play to make the play. And those are the things that I'm talking about. Then you're going to be challenged by this time difference, this travel, a long season. Man, how long can you repetitively do your job? It's going to be a test for all of us. It's going to be a test for the head coach. It's going to be a test for our coaching staff. And it's certainly going to be a test for our kids. So I think what I appreciate from this group is there is a curiosity to say, man, what are you talking about? And let's dig into this. Where can we drop the ball? Where could we really put ourselves in the danger zone? I think we were able to talk about that a lot this offseason and before camp started, so we knew, hey, these are the challenges I'm talking about when I talk about those things. So I do appreciate our leadership's curiosity. I think they're echoing a lot of the same messages that myself and our staff are, and the biggest thing, not only are they echoing it, they're showing that in their actions, at least so far.
What are you seeing from the center position thus far?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a unique race. I think that offensive line position in general, this is probably the deepest we've been since I've been here. You're talking about 3 guys that I really feel confident that could start at center for us with certainly Boniface and Black and honestly Dylan Barrett. Those 3 guys all are, man, they've all taken reps there, quality reps there. The right guard position, that'll be a unique spot. Obviously, Brendan Black's played there. Barrett has played a lot in there. This young guy, Vaya, has come in here and been a wow guy. I think he's as impressive as any young offensive lineman that's ever come in here and just been a difference maker so far. I think you got to throw his name into the mix of like, man, where's he at? Is he capable of helping this team do this? Austin Barrett's come in and really done some great things. So I think what we're looking for and sorting through is what is the best combination of 5. And maybe this year it's 6 or 7 guys that can go in and play. And I think it gives us a lot of flexibility. But I think that's probably still a little bit to say, hey, who's the starter today? I think, this week, probably early in the next week, till we know exactly who's the starter. And that could change as we go through the season a little bit. I think there's a lot of flexibility. The great thing is, boy, if you're going to play center, you better come to work right now, because those nose guards, with how Hawk's playing, obviously Dom, Kamori Moore is a kid he's probably way farther ahead than any freshman interior lineman that we've ever had here. And, what he did in the spring to where he is right now, it's been really awesome to see. So, again, that's where a little bit of iron sharpened iron. It's going to help you probably make the best decision.
Is the offensive line the most acute, where it's maybe not as important what a guy's best position is as what the best 5 is going to be, whatever combination is?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, yes, at times, now I think there are significant traits that a center has to have, snapping a ball and then the ability to move. I think some guys do some things really well. If you look at last year, we had Huff, and man, Huff could pull and run and move, and so you could do some things more with him than maybe you could have done previously. You look at, the guard position, I think Tyler Miller, asking him at 6'9" to go in and play guard, that's a little tougher than maybe him playing tackle. But, I think when you look at the bulk of our guys, they have position flexibility, and that part is really positive. But, Ryan does a great job of moving those guys around a lot in spring ball. I think when you move those guys around, you force them to understand. Now you're not just learning your position. You have to know the scheme. You have to know where help for the guards in the center and the tackles are. But, I think at this point you're starting to try to whittle down of like, man, who fits best? What is the best 5? And so I think those are conversations we're having daily right now in terms of that offensive line group.
Coach, as you sign another contract extension and enter year 10, has there been a moment where you've looked back at maybe how much this place has changed or how much this program has changed since you got here almost a decade ago?
Yeah, I don't know if that's it. It was fun for us this weekend. Jaquan Bailey was back here. I know he was at the NASCAR race this weekend. And, to me, I think one of the things I said this to Coach Haycock this morning coming out to practice, like one of the great gifts of being at somewhere where you've built something that you're really proud of is that so many of these guys are back. And they want to come back. They want to be around the program. I mean, what Jaquan Bailey did for our program was, man, you'd say that guy flipped the whole script. We went on signing day against Virginia Tech, year one, and Chase Allen year one, and to have those guys come back and come around the team and watch how we practice, see the facilities, you're just really grateful. You're grateful that, obviously we've had great support from our administration, from Jamie and from, Wendy. We've had great leadership to continue to support a vision of where we want to take this program. But I think the thing you're really grateful for are the people internally too that have worked here, stayed here, sacrificed, maybe bigger and better things to say, no, we want to build something. And, I've always said this with our own team, like, you're either somebody that wants to be somebody or you're somebody that wants to do something. And I know for the majority of our staff, we've been the type of people that we want to do something, and rather than try to be somebody else. And to be able to do that, and like I said, it's just really rewarding to have some of these guys back. Man, we had Charlie Kolar back here a bunch, Jake Hummel back here a bunch this offseason. Man, you get Brees and he's back here around. Brock wants to know what's going on during camp. Like, that just means a lot to you, and you're really appreciative of those things. And there's so many guys that they're the reason why this program is where it is today. Those are the guys that have laid the groundwork, their belief, their work, their sweat, their tears. Those are the people that have made this place really special. You're just grateful that you've been able to lead with the right people every step of the way.
Matt, with all your position battles, besides toughness, what other key criteria are you looking for when identifying starters?
Yeah, I think the word consistency is the word for me, and I've said this every step of the way with our own team since really since the spring. Who can consistently do their job? And there's a difference between a guy that can make a big play within the scheme, and then there's also the difference between a guy that can consistently do his job every day. And to me, that consistency, that's what we're looking for. And I think that is the biggest challenge, for one of the big challenges for this group as well. A lot of these guys are stepping into new roles. Yes, guys have played, but to be the full-time starter, to be the guy that's in the most critical moments. When you say players, formations, plays, well, I think we all could identify who those guys were a year ago. And 2 years ago probably on defense, but now who are those guys? Who are those guys in the moment that are ready to show up and be those A players in A situations? And so I think that's the big buzzword for me is consistency. And, the great ones are, I've always said greatness rises, and they rise because of their ability to come every day and demand to be the guy in the moment. And I think that's what we're all searching for, that's what we're all looking for in this camp. And camp tells you a lot, but boy, those lights come on and the ball gets kicked off and there's a full stands and everybody's yelling. That's when you really find out who it is. So these are great touch points of understanding repetitive, reps, but until it's on, until the moment, I still think this will be an unknown until we really get ourselves kicked off and the season starts and we can really start to identify who these guys are for us.
And what do you have to say about the maturation of Dom Orange from years past compared to now?
Yeah, I think Dom's just grown a lot. Dom has also always had elite talent. He's always been a guy that has, I think, cared greatly about becoming his best. I think working on the how has been his maturation. Dom's got an incredible mother. He's got a great brother that I know have been great influences on his life, but I think he's come here and really allowed over the last year and a half the support people here to really have a great impact in his life. How he's grown nutritionally. I mean, you look at that guy now and he looks completely different than he looked 2 years ago. He's physically changed his body. He's done a great job in nutrition. He's done a great job in strength. He's done a great job in the world of sports psychology and how do I turn a bad play and flip it and get back to the next play. So I think, again, that word consistency, that's the word for Dom that, we know he's got elite traits and he can make elite plays. Can you be that guy all the time for this football team? And, I know I said in the spring, if we're going to be as great as we think we've got the ability to become, I think we would hope that he's the guy that's the anchor of that for our football team this year.
Hey, Matt, Trey Redfield at Local 5. Wanted to ask more about this contract extension. You lock yourself in for another few more years. What is the biggest thing that you want to learn about yourself and your staff for the years to come?
Yeah, I just think, again, it's that word of curiosity. It's no different than I'm asking our own kids. I think sometimes when you can be at some place for an extended period of time, you lose the curiosity of growing and wanting to become your best. And I think those are things for me that it's what I sprint out of bed every day and try to figure out how can I, for the betterment of these kids that sacrifice everything to be their best, how can I do the same thing for them? And, I think we demand that of ourselves, certainly our coaching staff, the people that serve our program. And, to me, that's one of the great gifts, at least of being somewhere, is there is a deep-seated relationship with the players in our program. I don't ever want to disappoint them. I don't want to fail them. I think that whenever it gets to the point where I feel like I'm not serving them the way I should be, then that's when it's time for me to probably step aside. But the reality of it is it's what you're really proud of. It's what you sprint to this facility every day is how do I give my best and help build a program that allows these guys to be their absolute best.